Gist with subscribe and retention hooks. Keanu Reeves, known for his quiet kindness, found himself in an unexpected clash with aggressive security at his own luxury condo. What began as a routine return home spiraled into a tense confrontation. Security refused him entry. But when the truth finally came out, the entire situation took a shocking turn no one saw coming. This moment wasn't just surprising, it revealed something powerful about Keanu's character. Want more stories like this?
Hit that subscribe button now. Stay with us till the end, because the twist in this story is something you'll never forget.
Keanu Reeves had just returned from a long day of filming and meetings. The life of a Hollywood icon is typically chaotic, filled with back-to-back appointments, media appearances, and the constant pressures of fame. But when Keanu returned to his home, he was able to find solace and peace, something that many in his position struggle to achieve. Like many high-profile celebrities, Keanu lived in a luxury high-rise condo, a quiet and private sanctuary where he could retreat from the public eye and enjoy some semblance of normalcy. The building was located in one of the most exclusive parts of the city, surrounded by other luxurious residences. It offered Keanu a place to escape the constant scrutiny that came with being one of the most beloved actors in Hollywood. Keanu had always been known for his humble and grounded nature, traits that set him apart from many of his peers in the industry. He had made it clear in numerous interviews that he preferred a low-profile lifestyle, away from the flashy Hollywood parties and red carpet events. In fact, he was often seen riding public transportation and engaging in simple, everyday activities that made him more relatable to his fans. While others sought fame and wealth, Keanu's focus had always been on personal growth, peace of mind, and the relationships that mattered most to him. For him, his condo represented a place of refuge, a space where he could unwind, reflect, and be himself without the eyes of the world constantly watching. That evening, after a particularly long day on set, Keanu approached the entrance of his building, expecting a smooth and uneventful return to his home. His thoughts were likely filled with the usual end-of-day routine, taking a moment to relax, maybe reading a book, or simply enjoying a quiet night. But as he approached the security desk, something felt off. Instead of the usual calm and professional demeanor from the building's security team, Keanu was greeted with an unexpected sight. The guards, who typically recognized the actor without issue, were on high alert. Their faces were tense, their postures rigid. Keanu's presence, someone who had lived in the building for years, was met with a level of resistance that was entirely out of character. He approached the security desk as he had done many times before, expecting the usual polite greeting and easy access to his home. However, when he attempted to enter, Keanu was stopped by a security guard who was unusually forceful. The guard, who seemed to have no recognition of who Keanu was, insisted that Keanu could not pass. His tone was firm, his demeanor unyielding. Keanu, being the calm and respectful person he is, identified himself as a resident of the building. He explained that he lived there, that he was simply returning home after a long day. But to his surprise, the guard did not back down. Instead, he became more insistent, repeating that Keanu could not enter without proper verification. Keanu, in his typical understated manner, tried to remain composed. This was his home, after all, a place where he had lived for years. He had every right to enter. But despite his calm demeanor, the situation was beginning to escalate. The security guard, who had likely been following orders or dealing with a miscommunication, seemed unmoved by Keanu's words. The actor's identity meant nothing to the guard, who was simply doing his job, following the protocols laid out. For him, even if that meant denying access to a longtime resident. The tension in the air grew palpable as Keanu, trying to avoid confrontation, remained patient. He asked politely for a supervisor or a manager, hoping to resolve the situation quietly and quickly. But the guard continued to insist that Keanu could not pass without verification. The conversation became a back and forth of polite but firm refusal, with Keanu being forced to defend his right to access his home. What had started as an ordinary evening was quickly turning into an uncomfortable standoff. At this point, Keanu's usual calmness was beginning to crack. Though he was never one to raise his voice or show irritation, the absurdity of the situation began to weigh on him. He wasn't a stranger. He wasn't someone trying to break into the building or cause trouble. He was Keanu Reeves, a longtime resident. And yet he was being treated like an outsider. It wasn't just the inconvenience. It was the principle of the matter. This was his home, a place where he should feel safe and respected. Instead, he was being treated as if he didn't belong. The disrespect wasn't malicious, but it was frustrating nonetheless. As the exchange continued, other residents began to take notice. Some watched from their windows, others from the building's lobby, whispering among themselves. They could see that something wasn't right, and murmurs of curiosity began to spread. The sight of Keanu, usually so composed, engaged in a tense argument with security guards was an unusual spectacle. But Keanu's restraint was admirable. Despite the mounting pressure and the clear discomfort of the situation, he never raised his voice or resorted to anger. His calm demeanor stood in stark contrast to the aggressive tone of the security guards, and it made the entire situation feel even more surreal. Eventually, the building manager arrived on the scene, clearly confused about the situation. After a quick exchange, it was revealed that the building's security system had experienced an error, which had flagged Keanu's name as not being authorized to enter the building. The confusion had been caused by a technical glitch in the security system, which mistakenly marked Keanu as an unauthorized guest. The manager, who immediately recognized Keanu, apologized profusely and explained that the entire situation had been a misunderstanding. Keanu, ever the gracious figure, didn't express frustration or anger over the inconvenience. Instead, he simply nodded and accepted the apology, never once raising his voice or making a scene. His calm and understanding reaction left the security guard, the manager, and the onlookers speechless. Keanu's ability to handle the situation with grace and humility was a stark reminder of the kind of person he is, someone who doesn't let minor setbacks or frustrations alter his demeanor. He was a reminder that, even in the face of inconvenience or misunderstanding, the best course of action is always to stay composed and to act with kindness. As Keanu finally made his way to his condo, the situation came to a quiet resolution. The moment had been a temporary blip in his otherwise peaceful life, but it spoke volumes about the kind of person Keanu is. Despite being one of the most famous actors in the world, he handled the situation with the same humility and dignity that he applies to everything else in his life. It wasn't about the mistake or the inconvenience. It was about how Keanu chose to respond. His quiet strength was, as always, the most powerful thing in the room. The security guard, after a brief exchange, informed Keanu that there had been an issue with his access to the building. "I'm sorry, but you're not on the list," the guard said bluntly. The words, while simple, hit Keanu like a wave. His mind raced as he processed what had just been said. Keanu, ever calm and composed, tried to explain that he was, in fact, a resident of the building. This wasn't just a mix-up, it was his home. But the guard remained firm, insisting on following his instructions without hesitation, and, more importantly, without giving Keanu the benefit of the doubt. "I need to check the system," the guard stated, showing no recognition of Keanu or his rightful place in the building. Keanu, who had always been respectful and patient, felt his usually impenetrable calm begin to waver. It wasn't because he was being treated poorly, but because he was being treated like an outsider in his own home. A celebrity or not, Keanu had every right to expect to enter his residence without the drama and obstacles that many others in his position had to face. The fact that he had to defend his own access to the building was frustrating. The actor's tone remained respectful and patient, but anyone who looked closely could see that the situation was starting to test his nerves. His usually composed demeanor was showing signs of cracks, though he did everything he could to keep his frustration in check. There was a sense of disbelief in his eyes, as if he couldn't quite comprehend how things had escalated so quickly. As the exchange continued, a subtle shift occurred. Keanu wasn't just frustrated anymore. The entire situation began to feel like a confrontation he never wanted. A sense of indignation bubbled up in him, not because of the mistake, but because the guard's refusal to acknowledge him felt like an affront to his right to access his own living space. He wasn't a guest or an outsider. He was a resident of the building, someone who had lived there for years and had always respected the security procedures. But here he was, being treated like he didn't belong. The longer the conversation continued, the more Keanu realized that this wasn't just about a simple misunderstanding. It was about the failure of the system that was supposed to protect the building's residents, not make them feel like criminals trying to sneak in. Other residents, who had been going about their business in the lobby, began to take notice of the situation unfolding. Keanu, usually known for avoiding attention, was now at the center of a tense standoff with security. The whispers began almost immediately. People who had seen Keanu in the building before, who knew him to be a humble and private figure, exchanged looks, sensing that something wasn't right. The atmosphere in the lobby shifted, becoming heavier with every passing minute. Keanu, who had never been one to seek confrontation, now found himself forced to assert his identity and his right to be there. Security continued to insist that Keanu couldn't enter without proper verification. The guard, now more resolute in his stance, began to repeat the same phrases, insisting that Keanu was not on the list. It was as though Keanu's identity, his name, his face, his history with the building, meant nothing in the face of the guard's rigid adherence to protocol. The tension between the two men began to grow, with Keanu trying his best to remain patient, but starting to feel the weight of the situation. Keanu, already tired from a long day of filming and meetings, could feel the irritation creeping in. He had expected a quiet, peaceful evening after the chaos of the day, but instead he was being forced to prove himself. With a deep breath, Keanu politely asked to speak with a manager or someone in charge. He knew that this wasn't just about the mistake with the system. There was something deeper at play here. The guard, though firm, didn't seem malicious, just following orders. But the further the conversation went, the more it seemed like the issue wasn't going to be resolved quickly. Minutes passed and the silence grew thicker. The tension in the air was palpable, and Keanu could feel the eyes of the other residents on him. Some were obviously curious about the situation, while others seemed more uncomfortable by the awkwardness unfolding before them. Keanu could feel the weight of the moment bearing down on him, but he maintained his composure, not wanting to escalate things further. His patience, however, was beginning to wear thin. It wasn't just the fact that he was being stopped, it was the principle of it all. The building had always been his sanctuary, a place where he could find peace away from the relentless public gaze. But now, that peace had been shattered. At this point, the manager finally arrived, and the situation began to clear up. After a brief exchange, it was revealed that there had been an issue with the building's new security system. The system had erroneously flagged Keanu's name, marking him as an unauthorized guest. It was a simple technical glitch that had caused the mix-up, but for Keanu, it didn't make the situation any less frustrating. His access to his home had been denied due to something that was completely out of his control. Keanu, ever the gentleman, didn't express any anger at the staff. He didn't lash out or demand a public apology. Instead, he simply nodded and accepted the manager's apology. "Thank you for clearing that up," Keanu said quietly, flashing a small smile of understanding. It was a moment that could have been filled with frustration and resentment, but instead, Keanu showed the same calm demeanor he had always been known for. The mistake had been corrected, and Keanu was finally allowed to enter his home, but the moment had been a stark reminder of how even the smallest issues could feel much bigger in the hands of those who don't handle them with care. As Keanu made his way to his condo, the situation was resolved quietly, but the events of the evening left a lasting impact on everyone who had witnessed them. The moment served as a powerful reminder that even the most famous and well-liked figures in the world can be treated with disrespect and skepticism. But Keanu had handled the entire ordeal with patience, humility, and grace, something that was undoubtedly far more powerful than any confrontation or dramatic outburst could have been. His ability to stay calm in the face of inconvenience was a true testament to his character. As the situation continued, more security staff began to gather around, and the situation started to escalate in ways no one expected. Keanu, known for his humility and kindness, suddenly found himself in the midst of a tense standoff with the security team. Throughout the years, Keanu had earned a reputation for being one of the most grounded and respectful figures in Hollywood, and his usual calm demeanor had made him beloved by fans and colleagues alike. But here, in his own building, he found himself caught in a situation completely out of his control. While trying to stay calm and maintain control of the situation, Keanu was not angry but confused, frustrated at the sheer absurdity of it all. The moment seemed surreal. Keanu was not used to being treated this way, especially not in a place he called home. There was a sense of disbelief as the security guards continued to challenge him, with no clear reason for their refusal to allow him entry. It wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was becoming a situation where his presence was being questioned. Despite the fact that Keanu had been a resident of the building for years, the guards were adamant that he couldn't pass through without further verification. Their actions seemed more aggressive as the minutes passed, and Keanu's usual silence began to crack under the mounting pressure. Despite his reputation for being a calm and composed individual, Keanu's discomfort began to show. He had always handled challenges with grace, but this was different. His quiet demeanor was slowly replaced with visible discomfort. He wasn't angry or raising his voice, but the frustration was evident in his eyes. The situation, one he had never anticipated, was now unfolding in front of him, and he was being forced to defend his right to enter his own home. It was a feeling that anyone would struggle with, but for Keanu, it was especially jarring. As the altercation continued, more security staff arrived, perhaps to help or more likely, to reinforce the building's rules. The situation had grown increasingly uncomfortable, not only for Keanu but for everyone in the lobby who was now observing the exchange. The normally calm and humble actor was now at the center of a scene, and it was clear to the onlookers that something wasn't right. People began to exchange glances, sensing that something deeper was at play. Keanu, the man who had built a reputation for his kindness and humility, was now stuck in a standoff with building security, a scenario that, in hindsight, seemed almost unbelievable. This wasn't just some paparazzi incident or a fan interaction. This was an administrative issue that had escalated into something much more complicated. The more the situation dragged on, the more surreal it became. Keanu, for all his fame and success, was now standing in the lobby of his building, trapped in a situation where he couldn't even gain access to his own home. The building he had trusted to be a sanctuary was now a place of stress and confusion. As minutes stretched into what felt like hours, Keanu remained composed, but his frustration was clear. His polite attempts to explain himself and resolve the issue had gone ignored, and the tension in the air was palpable. He had tried more than once to clarify who he was, to present himself as the resident he had always been, but the guards seemed fixated on the issue at hand, refusing to budge. Keanu wasn't upset by the security guards' actions. He understood that they were just doing their job. But it was the complete lack of recognition and acknowledgement that truly bothered him. This wasn't just about a minor mistake. It was about his rights being questioned in the place where he should feel safest. He had every right to be frustrated, but Keanu never let it show. Instead, he continued to stay calm, attempting to resolve the issue by asking to speak with a manager. He had hoped that a higher authority would clear up the misunderstanding, but the situation was escalating in ways that left him with few options. His frustration wasn't about not being recognized as a resident. It was the simple fact that his right to be there was being denied without a clear reason. Keanu had always respected the rules of the building and had never caused a stir. He understood that security was in place for everyone's protection, but this was different. The way the situation was unfolding felt like an unnecessary test of his patience, one that was taking him further away from the peaceful evening he had expected. The longer it went on, the more Keanu felt trapped, unable to resolve the situation without confronting the absurdity of it all. At this point, the minutes stretched on, each one feeling heavier than the last. The frustration was building, but Keanu didn't raise his voice. Instead, he leaned into his years of experience dealing with difficult situations. He remained polite, but the discomfort was undeniable. It was as if he had reached a point where his patience had been stretched too far, and yet he still wasn't willing to back down. He asked to speak with a manager, someone who could confirm his identity and clear up the confusion. But each passing moment felt like an eternity. The awkwardness of the situation was increasing, and Keanu knew he had to do something to resolve it. He wasn't the type to demand attention or make a scene, but his patience was beginning to wear thin, and he realized that without some kind of resolution, the situation could continue to escalate. Keanu was left to navigate this strange moment, where his fame and status seemed irrelevant in the face of bureaucratic miscommunication. As the wait continued, Keanu's frustration had shifted from a personal attack to a matter of principle. Why should he have to defend his right to enter his own home? It wasn't about being recognized, it was about the unnecessary challenge to his autonomy. Finally, the manager arrived, and it became clear that this entire situation had been the result of a simple mix-up. The building had implemented a new security system that had mistakenly flagged Keanu's name, leading to the error. After a brief discussion, the misunderstanding was cleared up, and the manager apologized profusely for the inconvenience. Keanu, as always, accepted the apology with grace, not allowing the incident to affect him more than necessary. The entire experience, while frustrating for Keanu, was a testament to his character. His ability to handle the situation with patience and understanding, even in the face of inconvenience, was a rare demonstration of strength in an otherwise stressful situation. He didn't demand special treatment. Instead, he let the situation play out, remaining calm and collected until the issue was resolved. And when it was, he didn't make a big deal out of it. He simply entered his building and continued with his day. His calm response not only diffused the tension in the room, but also served as a quiet reminder of how to handle life's unexpected challenges with dignity. Just as the tension reached its peak, with Keanu standing in the lobby, his patience stretched thin, the building manager finally arrived to defuse the situation. It was clear that the entire interaction had become unnecessarily uncomfortable. Keanu, ever the composed and humble figure, had been caught in a misunderstanding that was spiraling out of control. The security guard, who had followed his orders without wavering, stood by awkwardly, unsure of how to proceed as the manager approached. The manager, recognizing the seriousness of the situation, quickly moved to engage with both Keanu and the security team. Keanu, who had been calmly explaining that he was indeed a resident of the building, stood silently as the manager approached. The air in the lobby was heavy with anticipation, the quiet murmurs of other residents who had gathered nearby only adding to the awkwardness. It was obvious to everyone present that Keanu was a well-known figure, yet the fact that he had been stopped at the door was bewildering to many. The manager wasted no time in addressing the issue directly, understanding the gravity of the situation. He spoke to the security guard in a firm yet composed manner, trying to understand the cause of the confusion. After a few minutes of back and forth, the truth came to light. It turned out that the building had recently implemented a new security system, one that was supposed to make things more efficient, but had inadvertently caused several issues. Keanu's name had been flagged in the system as not being authorized to enter the building, causing the mix-up. The security staff, following the protocol for unauthorized access, had no choice but to stop him at the door, unaware of who he was. The revelation came as a huge relief to everyone involved, though it didn't immediately solve the embarrassment the staff must have felt. Keanu, always the professional, stood quietly as the manager explained the mistake. The manager went on to apologize profusely, recognizing how much of a misunderstanding it had been and how unnecessary the situation had become. His apology was sincere, and Keanu, never one to make a scene, simply nodded, acknowledging that mistakes can happen. The security guard, who had been insistent moments before, now looked visibly embarrassed. His face reddened slightly, and he avoided eye contact with Keanu. It was clear that he had not intended to cause any discomfort, but had simply been following instructions from the building's new security system. The guard, now realizing the nature of the mistake, quietly stood by, allowing the manager to take the lead in addressing the situation. Keanu, however, wasn't interested in making anyone feel bad. As always, he handled the moment with grace and humility. Instead of pointing out the absurdity of the situation or lashing out at the staff, Keanu simply accepted the apology with kindness. He had no interest in adding further tension to an already uncomfortable moment. "Thank you for clearing that up," Keanu said quietly, flashing the manager a small but appreciative smile. His calm response was enough to diffuse the last remnants of the tension in the air. The manager, relieved that Keanu wasn't angry, smiled back at him. He was visibly grateful for Keanu's understanding. It was clear that the actor's professionalism and patience had played a huge role in calming the situation. Keanu's demeanor had transformed what could have been a public spectacle into a brief but tense misunderstanding. The building manager, who had been in charge of overseeing the new security protocols, promised that he would look into the issues with the system to ensure that no other residents would face similar problems in the future. For Keanu, however, the entire experience was a reminder of his character. Throughout the exchange, he never lost his composure or his humility. Even though he was the one being inconvenienced, he chose not to escalate the situation or allow his frustrations to take over. In an industry where temper tantrums and public outbursts are often glorified, Keanu's quiet strength was a reminder of what true grace under pressure looks like. His ability to maintain his calm, even in the face of a highly uncomfortable situation, spoke volumes about the man he was behind the scenes. As the exchange came to a close and the situation was resolved, Keanu finally entered the building, still, composed and unfazed by the drama that had unfolded. The residents in the lobby, who had been watching in curiosity, now saw a different side of Keanu. They saw not just the beloved actor, but the person, the one who could handle adversity with kindness and patience, the one who didn't let momentary frustration dictate his response. Keanu had, in that moment, demonstrated why he was admired not just as an actor but as a person. As the building manager and security staff continued to apologize and express their gratitude, Keanu nodded politely, accepting their words without making a big deal of it. He had always been a private individual, and his quiet nature allowed him to avoid conflict. The situation, which had been tense for a few minutes, was now behind him. He had managed to turn an uncomfortable experience into a moment of respect, not just for himself, but for everyone involved. Keanu's actions in that brief moment were a perfect example of his character: humble, forgiving, and always willing to resolve conflicts peacefully. His response didn't just resolve the situation at hand, it set a tone for how to approach challenges in life. Instead of making enemies or demanding retribution, Keanu chose the path of grace, understanding, and compassion. His quiet confidence had turned an awkward misunderstanding into a powerful reminder of how to handle adversity. As Keanu entered his condo, the incident was behind him, but the lessons learned were not. For everyone who had witnessed the exchange, it became a reminder of how important it is to approach life's challenges with patience and kindness. Keanu had once again proven that the real strength lies not in how we react to others' mistakes, but in how we handle our own discomfort with dignity and grace. His response wasn't just about resolving a problem, it was about setting an example of what it truly means to be humble, respectful, and composed, even when faced with the unexpected. As Keanu finally entered his building, the security guards and staff, who had previously treated him with skepticism, now watched in silence, somewhat ashamed. The situation had turned from a simple misunderstanding into something much larger. But it was Keanu's calm, respectful demeanor that ultimately reshaped the narrative. Keanu had proven that he wasn't just an actor who played tough roles on screen. He was a man of dignity and grace in real life as well. His response to the entire incident showed everyone present the true meaning of handling adversity with humility and patience. The interaction had begun with confusion and frustration. Keanu had been treated like an outsider, despite being a long-time resident of the building. But what could have been a bitter confrontation was instead transformed into a powerful lesson in how to navigate challenges with respect and composure. His quiet strength and refusal to escalate the situation showed the world that true character doesn't rely on power or authority, but on how we respond to adversity. As Keanu walked past the security staff and into the lobby, there was a clear shift in the atmosphere. The tension that had once been palpable had dissolved, replaced by a deep sense of respect from the onlookers. The story of Keanu Reeves being blocked by aggressive security from his own luxury condo spread quickly, but not for the reasons one might expect. What began as a simple mix-up turned into a story of how an unexpected situation can be handled with grace, patience, and kindness. The incident sparked conversations among the other residents in the building, many of whom had been quietly watching the interaction unfold. Some had been unaware of the mix-up, but all now found themselves reflecting on what had just happened. For those who witnessed it, the story wasn't just about a famous actor being inconvenienced. It was about how the situation was handled, and what that said about the man at the center of it. Keanu could have reacted with frustration, demanding to be recognized, or even raised his voice in protest. But instead, he remained calm and composed, never letting the situation rattle him. His ability to take a moment, process the situation, and respond with dignity left a lasting impression on everyone involved, especially those who had initially questioned his right to enter the building. As news of the event spread, residents and staff members alike began discussing how Keanu's response had made them rethink their own approach to challenging situations. In a world where conflicts often escalate quickly, where tempers flare and situations spiral out of control, Keanu had shown a different path, a path of patience and kindness. His actions were a reminder that even when life seems to be working against you, the best way to respond is often with understanding and calmness. His reaction set a standard for how to treat others, regardless of their status or appearance. The building staff, who had initially been caught up in the confusion of the security mix-up, took a step back and reflected on the incident. They realized that, in the heat of the moment, they had failed to recognize the importance of treating every person with respect, regardless of their fame or stature. Keanu, without raising his voice or making a spectacle of himself, had shown them how to approach a problem with compassion. The staff, feeling somewhat embarrassed by the situation, acknowledged their mistake. But more importantly, they took Keanu's response as an opportunity to learn and grow. They understood that mistakes happen, but how they respond to those mistakes is what matters most. The story of Keanu's calm handling of the situation quickly became a point of discussion among the other residents as well. Many admired his ability to maintain his composure, while others marveled at how easily Keanu seemed to brush off the whole incident. His reaction became a talking point, not just because of who he was, but because of how he chose to act. It was a reminder to everyone in the building, and perhaps even beyond, that in times of frustration, the best response is often one of understanding and grace. Keanu's actions spoke volumes about his character. He didn't need to prove anything to anyone. He simply remained true to himself, even in the face of an unjust situation. His humility, his refusal to allow a minor inconvenience to derail his day, and his understanding that mistakes happen, all contributed to how he handled the situation with grace. Keanu's ability to show kindness, even when things were not going his way, left a lasting impact on everyone who witnessed it. In a world that often rewards aggression and quick reactions, Keanu had chosen the path of calm and measured response, and it worked. What stood out most in the aftermath of the incident was how Keanu's composure didn't just solve the issue at hand but helped to de-escalate the entire atmosphere. The situation, which had begun with frustration and tension, was transformed by Keanu's kindness and patience into a moment of collective reflection. His actions taught everyone in that building something invaluable about how to navigate life's challenges with grace. It wasn't about being the loudest or the most forceful person in the room. It was about staying true to yourself and responding with empathy, no matter the circumstances. Keanu's character, both on and off screen, remains a beacon of humility and respect for others. His response to the security situation was a clear example of how we can all learn to handle adversity with dignity, regardless of the chaos or confusion around us. Through his actions, Keanu proved once again that the true measure of a person's strength isn't in how they react to success, but in how they respond to moments of difficulty. The lesson was clear. Even when faced with frustrating or unexpected situations, the best response is always one of understanding, patience, and kindness. Keanu's ability to stay grounded and calm in the face of a minor conflict serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of treating others with respect, and that sometimes the most difficult challenges are best handled with grace.